Gentlemen, we are live. Thank you, everyone, for the coming in here today to watch us here at the Joe Show. As you can see, we're in a nice little setup today. Left the home for a little bit. We're doing some things out here right now. So thank you, everyone, for the success we've had as of recent, man. We have had a really successful week. Our Brad shirts that we dropped about Coach Brad Johnson did amazing. Um, we have done amazing on some of our recent episodes. A lot of support. Been talking to a lot of people, and as you can see, I'm repping the Joe shirt merch for the Joe Show merch. There we go for the show, and that's something that's going to be coming to you guys soon. I thought it was a good time to do it. The recent support, like I said, has been amazing. So there's not a better time that I could roll this out for you guys. Um, Making sure everything's working on Facebook, making the lives public right now for everyone to come in and join, making sure Twitter's going good. But let's go ahead and talk about our guest today. We're going to be joined by an amazing man, an amazing person, a great guy I've got to know as of recent, and an Evanston County native, Keith Madison. Keith has had an outstanding career. He's part of multiple Hall of Fames. He coached in high school. He coached in the high school realm, the college realm, eventually coached at Kentucky for 1979 to 2003, if I believe. That's the information that I had. So Keith has been in the game. He was in the game for a long time, and he was very successful. Keith was an amazing coach. I've read some things about some of the players have said about him. Very high praise by his players. So he's a great guy. So we're going to get that interview soon because I know a lot of you guys want that, and I do too. I think it's going to be great. But let's talk about our show sponsors. This is a new design, a little bit of thing we're going to do. I call this the sponsor wall, the Joe Show sponsor wall. Here's our sponsors for today episodes. Let's go ahead and start right into it. Let's talk about our show sponsor. Our show sponsor for today is Kayaks and More. That is a local mom and pop shop located on Highway 259 in Bee Spring. They can provide you with all your outdoor needs, and they really excel in kayaks. With their they have a lot of equipment actually being used nationwide right now in some tournaments, etc. They are Kim and Tony Polson, and an easy way to contact them is 270-286-7001. That is Kayaks and More. Let's go to CNA Plumbing. They are a local plumbing business located in Brownsville. They can cover all your plumbing needs at an affordable price. An easy way to contact them is Adam Coates or Craig Childress. Those guys are great. They have been a sponsor since day one, so thank you. Let's go ahead and go to Patton Funeral Home. They are a local funeral home business with locations in Cave City, Park City, and Brownsville. The phone number to contact them is 270-597-2136. And kind of a family business with them. We got Lake Forest Recruiting Firm and Braden's Blessings. Lake Forest, can't stutter on this one. Some of us have a problem with this one. But Lake Forest offers part-time or full-time permanent placement for psychiatrists and psych NPs, which is nurse practitioners. We work diligently to find our clients and candidates the perfect fit. And then Braden's Blessings, which is a local charity by Allison and Jay Holland. They are honoring the life of Braden Combs, who tragically lost his life in 2019. Allison and Jay are two amazing human beings. They do some great work. I love those guys. They have been sponsoring us since day one, actually. Day one. They were our first ever sponsor. So thank you for the continued support. Next is a new guy, Corey Colberth at Kentucky Farm Bureau. Contact insurance agent Corey Colberth for all your insurance-related needs. He is located at the Kentucky Farm Bureau building in Brownsville, Kentucky. An easy way to contact him is 270-597-2127. Let's go on to our other guy, H&K Construction, Consulting, and Management. That is Alan Keppel. We do custom homes. Quality you deserve at a price you can afford. That is Alan Keppel. Make sure to check out their newest Facebook page they have up. And an easy way to contact them is 270-791-2288. Next up, we have Shauna Grable Realtor. Shauna is a local realtor who is part of the Grable Group in Keller Williams. Her office is located in the Keller Williams building across from the Green River Apartments in Brownsville. Her easiest way of contact is 270-246-1329. And this will all be listed after the episode as well to contact these guys. Next up is Laserit. Laserit is a laser engraving service who can make and produce just about anything. They can do work on hats, and they have some amazing batches of hats they've been rolling out. Also can make cutting boards. They can work on baseball gloves and so much more. Follow them on their Facebook page or contact them through Caleb Skaggs. Thank you, Caleb, for all you've done for me. He's done a lot of things for me. He's made stuff back at the other studios. And next, but certainly not least, is Sanders Radiators #1. That is my great friend, Dusty Wilson. Sanders is an automotive and radiator repair service located in Bowling Green, Kentucky. An easy way to contact them again is 270-843-1772. Shoo, that's a lot of talking, but that there is our sponsors, folks. Let's go ahead and get our overlay back on. But yes, thank you. We already have a lot of people rolling up in here. Thank you. This is going to be a big time episode. I'm really happy for this. Those are our sponsors, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to support and follow them. And I'm not going to do it just yet, but let's talk about our guest, Keith Madison. I'd mentioned Keith Madison is an Edmonson County native. I shared some photos recently. We've been hyping up this show. This is going to be a good one. I'm really excited for this. And let's do without further ado, let's get our guy in here, Keith Madison. Keith, how are you?
I'm great, Joseph. How are you this evening?
Man, I'm doing great, and I'm really excited for this. Once again, I said it backstage, but thank you for being on here. This is really
Absolutely.
big.
Yeah, glad to do it.
So I'm just going to ask a simple question: how have you been, and what are you up to?
Well, I've been doing well, and I've been up to watching a lot of baseball games. It's college baseball season. It's tournament time. The Kentucky Wildcats are all set to host an NCAA regional in Lexington, so I'm going to be hanging out the ballpark, actually on radio with my friend Darren Hedrick. We team up to do the radio broadcast for Kentucky Sports Network.
Mhm.
So even though I'm not coaching anymore, I'm still very much involved and love supporting the program, and just love the way Coach Mingione is leading this team and getting it done this year.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about Kentucky's recent success. I checked; they were 40 and 14. They're 22 and 8 in conference play. They're number 2 in the country. What do you think it is about this team that's so special? They got a lot of great batters and pitching. What do you think so special about them?
Well, I think one thing is the way they've come together as a team. They're a very mature team. They have a lot of guys that are, 21, 22, a couple even 23 years old. So they've been around the block a few times, and they're very resilient because of their maturity. When they get down in a game, uh, they have the ability to come back, and they've had a lot of comeback games this year. Very exciting games. So I like that aspect of them. I like the way that they can score a lot of different ways. They have some guys in their lineup that have a lot of power,
Mhm.
but they can steal bases. They lead the SEC in stolen bases. They play great defense. They can bunt. They can hit and run. They're just an exciting team to watch. Their bullpen has started off the season tremendous, but they've been struggling a little bit as of late. So I'm hoping with a little bit of rest after the SEC tournament, they can get those arms rested up and come back and be like they were back earlier in the season. If they can do that, they can perhaps end up in Omaha this year in the
Yeah.
College World Series.
Well, that's where I hope to see them. They are, like you said, a really entertaining, fun team. So let's take a little bit of a transition. So, Keith, like I said before, you are from Edmonson County. How was your life growing up in Edmonson County? Your living environment, your school career? How was that?
It was great. Loved living in Edmonson County. Still love Edmonson County. Have a lot of friends there. Uh, the first house I remember living in was back on a gravel road. It's not gravel anymore, but it was the Pat Lindsay Road there in Lindsayville. So we lived about a mile back that road, um, and this is really going to date me, but I'm the youngest of three siblings, and my brother and sister went to a one-room schoolhouse in Lindsayville called Midway.
Mhm.
And on Friday afternoons, when the weather was good, Miss Mariah Decker, who was the teacher at that school, she would give the Friday afternoon off for the kids to play softball or baseball. I can't even remember which one it was. So my older sister, who was in the third grade, or fourth grade. My brother was, I think, in first grade. They would let me go to school with them on Fridays as a 5-year old. We didn't have kindergarten stuff like that
Yeah.
back then, and so I went because I could play. I could play ball Friday afternoon. So that was my first introduction into the sport. Plus, my neighbors back on the Pat Lindsay Road were the Brownings, and Anthony Browning, who you may know,
Yeah.
Brian's dad. Anthony was a really good pitcher. And when I was about 5 years old and Anthony was about 10 or 11, I used to go down and watch him pitch to
Mhm.
his brothers. And I thought, man, I want to do that someday. I want to be like that. And then my Little League baseball coach was David Webb, who was a tremendous Little League coach, very encouraging. He was a great competitor. And he later was my algebra teacher. He later, of course, became the superintendent of schools there at Edmonson County. So just a tremendous guy. So I had, and then Kadon Van Meter was my high school baseball coach. He was a great coach. He was the perfect coach for me at the high school level. He was a very disciplined guy. He didn't talk a whole lot. He didn't yell a whole lot, but he was like E.F. Hutton. When he said something, everybody listened. So he was a great coach, and really enjoyed playing for him there at Edmonson County High School.
So you mentioned, your early come up in liking baseball, figuring out about the sport. So let's talk about sports when you were at Edmonton County. You're obviously a legend in the baseball realm, but you sent me some pictures, and also here you were a pretty good basketball player. So talk a little bit about your high school sports.
Yeah, I love basketball. My brother and I grew up going one-on-one against each other in the backyard. Uh, and he was older than me, stronger than me, so I had to be pretty tough, and so that helped me in both basketball and baseball. But like a lot of kids growing up in Kentucky, especially back in those days, my dream was to play basketball at Kentucky.
Mhm.
I wasn't that good. I didn't know it. But I really wasn't that good. But I could shoot a little bit. We had several great players on our team. Tracy Meredith, he was the best player on our team. Carlton Alexander, Ed Rich, Tommy Houchin, uh, Barry Wood. We had a lot of fun playing together. It was a fun team. And Carlton Alexander got hurt at the end of the year, my senior year. He was a junior. He and Tracy were juniors. We lost in the regionals in the semifinals to Ohio County. And I really believe if Carlton hadn't been hurt, we might have had a chance
Oh yeah.
to make it to the state tournament. I don't know. Those Owensboro teams were back in those third region years were pretty tough. But yeah, basketball was probably my first love, big love as a sport. But when baseball season rolled around, baseball was my first love. So it's whatever season
Mhm.
was in, and so we had really good baseball at Evanston County in those days. So and my older brother, and guys like Anthony Browning and Lemuel Meredith and Ricky Vincent and all these guys were Stevie Meredith. They were outstanding baseball players. I looked up to those guys, and that sort of inspired me to do my best. And I could always throw hard, but finally my senior year, I got a little bit of control, at least enough to where some colleges and some of the pro scouts started getting interested.
Yeah, you mentioned the Owensboro teams, and man, they're still powerhouses. Our baseball team actually, I think it's tomorrow, goes on to play Owensboro Catholic in regions, so that will be fun. Let's talk about it. I mentioned it before the show. You mentioned some of the guys. Let's talk about the Steve Hollow Invitational Tournament.
Oh
So,
yeah, that was back nowadays they have AAU basketball and the travel basketball, travel baseball. Well, we sort of formed our own league back then, and some of the boys from Brownsville, some of the boys from Lindsayville, and a couple of boys from Steep Hollow. We would meet in a barn, in the Alexander barn, up there, not too far from the Steep Hollow Church.
mhm.
And they had a big loft in that barn, and so we had these 9-foot goals in the loft, and the games were pretty rough,
Yeah.
but we had a great time. Richard Minton, Carlton Alexander, John Lindsay, um, Billy Hightower. I don't know, a bunch of guys, and we were all knuckleheads and played really hard up there. And so back in those days, Joseph, the University of Kentucky had this incredible holiday tournament called the UKIT, the University of Kentucky Invitational Tournament. And so we were all big UK fans at that time. And so we decided to create our own holiday tournament, and we call it the Steep Hollow Invitational Tournament. So we drew a big circle in the middle of the barn loft, and we wrote SHIT in that circle standing for the Steep Hollow Invitational Tournament.
That's a good one. That's a
Now,
really
I hesitate to tell that story because I know Richard Minton is he's a preacher, he's a
oh yeah.
pastor now, but he was one of the gang leaders there. He was one of the guys. But it was fun. We had a great time up there. We were slam dunking and just having a great time.
So let's transition a little bit. Let's talk about the pros. You spent time with the Reds, Bradenton for rookie ball, Watertown, Winnipeg, Tampa, Three Rivers, Quebec. Share with me some of your best memories and moments in the pros, but also tell me about getting recruited and scouted to play in that situation.
Yeah, it's back in the '60s. It was really hard for a kid from Evanston County to get scouted. When I graduated from high school, I had never met a college coach or a pro scout for sure. But Coach Van Meter helped me get hooked up with the Bowling Green American Legion team.
Mm.
And so I played on that Legion team after my junior year of high school, which was a huge help for me. It gave me a lot of experience. I played with guys from Bowling Green High School, and they were really, really good back in those days in baseball. They won the state tournament a couple of times back in that era. Guys from University High, which no longer exists, guys from Orange Central, Logan County, Franklin Simpson, all those places. We came together and we had one heck of a American Legion baseball team, which is similar to travel ball nowadays. So it was after my senior year, and I was playing Legion ball, still hoping to get for a chance to get a scholarship. I really wanted to play at Murray State University because that's where Lemuel Meredith from up in Beach Spring and his older brother, Marion Kenneth Meredith, both of those guys played at Murray State. They were very good. And so I sort of had hopes and dreams of following in their footsteps and playing for the late, great Johnny Reagan at Murray State University. So my Legion coach, he set it up to where Coach Reagan from Murray State would watch me pitch at a tournament down in Paducah, Kentucky, at the old minor league ballpark there. So I was supposed to pitch on like a Saturday night, I think against Paducah, but our team got in a little trouble on Friday night. We were supposed to easily beat Greensburg, and we got out to a 9-0 lead. But Greensburg just kept crawling back in the game. This was middle June or late June, after I graduated from high school. So I'm playing this tournament, and so finally, in the ninth inning, the score was 9-9, and our Legion coach had me get loose in the bullpen, and he was going to bring me in relief. And I'm going, what in the world? I'm supposed to pitch tomorrow night, and if I pitch tonight, Coach Reagan's not going to get to see me pitch, and so it really made me nervous, and actually made me a little bit angry, to be honest with you. So when I went down to bullpen to warm up, I don't know if it was the adrenaline or the anger or what, but I started throwing harder than I'd ever thrown in my life. Yeah. And when they brought me into the game, the score was still tied 9-9 in the bottom of the ninth. Mm. And the bases were loaded and there were no outs. So it was a tough situation. Yeah. I'm thinking, man, I may only pitch one pitch. If I make a wild pitch or hit this guy, or if a guy gets a base hit, there's a lot of different ways to score in that situation. We lose the game. Yeah. So this is a true story. It sounds it sounds crazy, but it's true. The first pitch I threw in that situation with loaded bases and no outs was right at the hitter's head. And it had some heat on it. And so the hitter ducked, and when he ducked, the ball hit his bat, and it was a foul ball. So I go on to strike that guy out. I strike the next two guys out. And this was the greatest night I ever had. And so the game went to extra innings, and I struck out 9 guys in a row, and we ended up winning the game. And so after the game, of course, I was excited that we won the game and that I pitched so well, but I was also a little upset because, I didn't think Coach Reagan was there. And so my Legion coach, Mike Cobb, came up to me and said, Keith, I know you're expecting to pitch tomorrow night, but we really needed you to finish this game. And even though Coach Reagan didn't get to see you pitch tonight, there's a couple of guys over there that want to meet you by the dugout. And there were two pro scouts, one from the Detroit Tigers and one from the Montreal Expos.
Mhm.
Now, this is after the draft. The draft was earlier in June back then. So I thought, well, that's pretty neat. I get to meet a couple of pro scouts. And so they gave me these little information cards, and they told me they would be in touch with me. And this was long before cell phones. So the coach took us out to the Jerry's restaurant in Paducah to eat a post-game meal. And there was a phone booth there. So I called my dad, and I said, Dad, you're not going to believe this, but I actually met two pro scouts tonight. And he said, is that right? So he was excited for me. So Joseph, to make a long story a little bit longer, the next week, the scout from the Montreal Expos called me and asked if he could come up. And he talked with my dad, and my dad invited him up to our house there in Lindsayville. And so he offered me a contract. It was a free agent contract. It was after the draft, but they could sign me as a free agent. And so, my mother said, I was expecting, Keith to go to college, and this is pretty sudden. He's only 17 years old, and I'm not sure, we're ready for him to be traveling all across the country, playing minor league baseball. So the scout said, Major League Baseball has a scholarship program that they will pay Keith's tuition wherever he wants to school, and we'll add that into the contract. And so that was a big selling point because my parents wanted me to go to college.
Yeah.
So because I was so young, and by the time I signed, it was already midway through the summer. So the scout wisely said, hey, you're only 17. You're not going to be 18 until October. Why don't you go to school your entire freshman year? You're going to be under contract. And then after your freshman year of college, you could start playing rookie ball as an 18-year-old. And that's I was anxious to get started, but I know my parents really appreciated that.
Yeah.
So that's exactly how it worked out. I went to Western and got a head start on my education. Coach Pickens at Western, the baseball coach there, then he allowed me to work out with the baseball team in the spring to sort of get ready for my minor league introduction. So I report to West Palm Beach in June of 1970 and spend a couple of weeks in West Palm Beach at the Expos spring training complex. And they assigned me to Bradenton, which was the Gulf Coast League, their rookie ball league. And so I got introduced to professional baseball there in Bradenton and pitched okay. I pitched fairly well. And then they needed a pitcher up in Watertown, South Dakota. And they sent me up to Watertown, and I had never been that far away from home before. It was an interesting experience, and I just did so. And then if you've got a minute, I'll tell you what happened the following year. That was really a big break in my life. The next year, I went to spring training with the Expos and had a really, really good spring training. But they wanted me, because I was still only 19 years old, they still wanted me to play at Watertown. So that means I had to go to a thing called extended spring training, where I did nothing but practice and play inter-squad games and things like that for an entire month after spring training. Then I go to Winnipeg, and the manager of the Watertown, the manager of the Watertown team, he saw that when I started, I threw really hard for about 3 innings, and then I would kind of run out of gas and not throw as hard. So he talked to me about maybe being the closer on the team. Yeah. And I didn't know a whole lot about that, to be honest with you. I never pitched much relief except for that one night at Legion Ball. But I really clicked. It just really was good for me. I love coming in tight situations. I love coming in and just being able to throw my fastball and not worry about, being out there for 6 innings. Plus, every day I got to the ballpark, I felt like I had a chance to play. if you're a starting pitcher, you only get to play in about every 5 or 6 games. So that was really good for me. And I really blossomed in that role. And within about 4 weeks, they had moved me up. I actually skipped double A, went all the way to triple A as a 19-year-old. So all of a sudden, as a 19-year-old kid, I'm pitching in triple A against guys that some of them had already played in the major leagues, some of them on their way to the major leagues. And it was a tremendous experience for me. So, that's sort of the beginning of my minor league career. And then like a lot of other people, the injuries start coming and all that happens. And I ended up getting released from the Montreal Expos in the spring training of 1971. And that's when the Cincinnati Reds picked me up. And I signed with them and kind of worked my way back up, pitched for Tampa, went to double A for the Three Rivers Quebec team. That was the double A team for the Reds back then. And then actually after that, I signed a triple A contract and then hurt my knee really badly. Actually playing basketball in the off season at Western Kentucky University, playing one of those pickup games, and tore my anterior cruciate ligament in my knee. And back in the early 70s, that was a tough injury for an athlete. They didn't have the surgical procedures they do now. So that pretty much ended my career. I tried to make it, but I just couldn't really land on that front leg like I had once before. And so that's when I started thinking about finishing college and what am I going to do now that my professional baseball career is over.
So, like we just mentioned, your playing career ended a little quicker than you probably, predicted. Was coaching baseball after that your first goal, or did you have other careers you kind of considered before that?
I tell you, to be honest with you, Joseph, when I was playing minor league baseball, especially after having been in AAA, just one step away from the major league so quickly, I was probably too young and too immature to have a plan B.
Yeah.
So I was just going to college during the off season, still hoping I was going to be in the big leagues.
Yeah.
But once I got released by the Reds, I had to, and then I got married right about that time too. I had to decide I got to grow up here. I got to get a real job.
Yeah.
And so my cousin Kenneth Ashley was teaching down in Central Florida at that time, and he suggested that my wife Sharon and I go down there and apply for jobs, and that's what we did. And so he said, with your background as a baseball player, you shouldn't have any trouble getting a coaching job. So that's where I landed, Lake Wales, Florida. I was an assistant basketball coach and assistant baseball coach my first year. The second year I was the second year I was the head baseball coach at Lake Wales High. And then the guy that had been the head baseball coach at Lake Wales suggested that I go into college baseball because of my pro experience. So he introduced me to a guy named Ron Polk, who was a legendary coach at Mississippi State University. And I was able to get a graduate assistantship at Mississippi State University. They had a great program, and he allowed me to be the pitching coach on the team, even though I was only, at the time, 25 years old. So I did that, and then the Kentucky job came open later that spring after my 1 year at Mississippi State. I applied for that job, and that's another long story. But somehow I got an interview with Cliff Hagan, who was he was sort of an iconic figure in UK basketball, but he was the athletic director at that time. And he offered me the job, and it wasn't a great job, but it was to me because it was University of Kentucky. And at 26 years old, I had an opportunity to be the head baseball coach at an SEC school. So because of a lot of hard work and some really good players, we got that program turned around, and it became a much better job as the years progressed.
Yeah, and at the time, I believe you were actually the youngest D1 baseball coach ever. You were the youngest ever. You had some amazing years. Y'all guys, actually, you broke the record for wins in a season your first year there.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that, Joseph, is the year before, basically the same team had broken the school record for losses.
Mhm.
And so I think just because I was young and I could relate to those players and they were eager to win, you know, I I would love to take credit for it, but my players really turned that thing around. I mean, they came together and played really hard, played really well, and in a year's time, just flipped that and broke the school record for wins.
Yeah. So you got to coach some greats. You got to coach Brandon Webb, a guy you got to coach that I really love. He had actually joined me on the show a few weeks prior to this, Joe Blanton. You ended up coaching 17 guys who made it to the MLB. Name some of those guys that you really enjoyed coaching. I know you probably enjoyed all of them, but name some of those guys you enjoyed coaching and tell us about experiences with your players.
Yeah, I had some great guys, not just great athletes and talented players, but just really good individuals. And Joe Blanton was one of those guys. And I actually watched your interview with Joe. I thought that was great. It was so neat to hear him. Now that he's a
Yeah,
family man, and I think he told you that he was coaching his
yeah.
kids, and all
He's
that.
sitting back drinking wine. He's living the life, man.
Yeah, yeah, he owns his own vineyard out there in Napa Valley, I think. But what a great guy he was. But he was so shy
Yeah,
when I recruited him. I couldn't get him to talk on the phone. I would call and I couldn't get him to say anything. So when I would call, I would just hope that his dad Joey or his mom Carolyn would answer the phone so that I have somebody to talk to. So, but he was such a homebody. I was scared to death he was going to go to Western, that he wouldn't come to UK. But
yeah,
I was really excited that he came. But yeah, he was a great one, and he threw gas. I mean, he threw so hard. Led the SEC in strikeouts and all that stuff. And then as he got older in the major leagues, he sort of reinvented himself and
yeah,
became more of a slider changeup pitcher. And I was really impressed with that because in the major leagues, as you know, Joseph, you can't just rely on a good fastball. You gotta throw, you
yeah.
gotta locate your fastball and have a couple of secondary pitches to have success. And he did that.
Mhm.
Brandon Webb was a guy I really enjoyed. Really fun to watch him mature as he was at Kentucky, and struggled a little bit as a freshman, then kind of got it going as a sophomore and junior, and not only won the Cy Young Award in 2006, but he finished second in the Cy Young Award competition 2 other years. So he had even though it was a relatively short career, it was a great career. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, a shoulder injury ended that. Another Kentucky guy that played a long time in the big leagues was Terry Shumpert from Paducah Tillman High School. Great infielder, played, I don't know, 11 or 12 years in the major leagues. And then yet another Kentucky boy, Paul Kilgus from Bowling Green High School, pitched a long time in the major leagues. Paul was a fierce competitor and just a great guy to have on the mound. And I stay in touch with most of those guys on a regular basis. And then I'm trying to think, Jeff Parrott from here in Lexington. He pitched about 11 years in the major leagues. Jeff Keener was my first player to make it to the major leagues. His senior year at Kentucky, he was 13-1 with a 0.51 earned run average.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, he was special. So he goes into Double A after his senior year, and in 1 year he's in the major leagues
Yeah,
for the Cardinals. So and then other guys, I'm going to leave people out, but it was a good run, and I enjoyed coaching those guys. I was blessed to have some really good players, and not just good players, but good human beings on my
yeah,
team.
yeah. Speaking of Paul Kilgus, me and him's actually talked. He's a good friend of my dad about getting him on here. I think it would be a pretty good show. So I
Oh, it'd be
want
a great show because
Paul here.
he has tremendous knowledge about baseball, and especially local baseball,
Yeah,
because he coached that little league team that from Bowling Green, went to the Little League World Series, and he's been involved in baseball around Bowling Green ever since he got out of the major league. So he would be a good one. Now he's going to tell you something. He's going to tell you how mean I was. I don't want you to believe him. I really
Oh,
wasn't.
I won't believe a word. But it was a long, amazing career at Kentucky for you, coaching wise. But yeah, it's hard to narrow it down to one. But could you give me one memory that you just remember that was just amazing that you love?
Wow, boy, that's hard. I'm thinking about sweeping LSU when they were ranked number one. I'm thinking about playing Stanford in the finals of the regionals. We were one out away from the College World Series, and uh, Stanford hit a line drive right over my shortstop's head, and they got to go. Um, and then, you know, it, maybe not in terms of success, but uh, one of my fondest memories is the last game I coached at the University of Kentucky. Um, I stayed in the dugout after the game was over, and there were a lot of friends and people that came because it was my last game. And, they had a little award ceremony there at the end of the game, and a lot of people from the media wanted to talk to me there in the dugout. So I just sat there and talked to those guys, and, and, um, and I noticed that nobody was left in the dugout. It was just me.
Mhm.
And I thought, this is going to be a lonely walk, my last walk from the dugout to the locker room. It's going to be really lonely because I would have to walk down the right field line through a gate into a building.
Mhm.
And it just really made me sad.
Yeah.
Uh, but when I came out of the dugout, my entire team was waiting for me just beyond the dugout.
Yeah.
And when I started walking, they all got around me and walked with me to the locker
Mhm.
room.
Yeah.
And that was such a special time because it makes you realize that the wins are great,
Mhm.
and watching guys make it to the major leagues is great. Competing in the SEC is great, but it's the relationships
Yeah.
that you have with guys like Brandon Webb and Joe Blanton and Paul Kilgus.
Mhm.
I mean, that means everything. And so, whatever profession you're in, um, don't don't neglect building great relationships because you spend so much time with the people you work with. Besides your family, that can be the greatest. That could be the greatest source of positive relationships that you can have. So I encourage people just to develop those relationships, and um, and it just makes your life so much better.
Mhm. A guy like me who wants to go into coaching when they get older, I've heard a lot of coaches say that same thing. The most important thing about being a coach is building those special bonds. Do you agree with that? That is the most important thing?
No doubt about it. It's so big. And I mean, I'll give you an example, Joseph. I mentioned earlier that my little league coach was David Webb.
Mhm.
I stayed in touch with Mr. Webb until the day he died, literally the day he died. He actually called me the day he passed away. And that was so special for me. And to have a coach like Coach Van Meter, who I've stayed in touch with, and my mother still lives in Lindsayville. She'll be 96 next month. But when I leave Lindsayville and head back home, I always go through Sweden and Bee Spring,
Mhm.
and sometimes I'll just stop at Coach Van Meter's house there in Bee Spring and visit with him a little bit, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And it's the to me the really sweet things in life are family, friends, and faith.
Yeah.
And when you have those three things, and those things are going in the right direction for you, you've got a good life.
Yeah. You mentioned it, and that's a question I had that I was actually just about to ask. Talk about your faith a little bit. I know it's a huge part of your life. And did you ever blend faith with your coaching?
Yeah, I mean, I never was one. I didn't beat guys over the head with the Bible or anything like that. But they knew where I stood,
Yeah.
and they knew that every Sunday we were going to have a little Bible study.
Mhm.
Because unfortunately in the SEC you play on Sunday, so guys can't go to church.
Yeah.
So I wanted to provide that opportunity for them, and we'd have guest speakers come in. But my faith has been very important to me ever since. Uh, I surrendered my life to Christ at Midway Baptist Church there in Lindsayville when I was 12 years old. It's always been a huge part of my life,
Mhm.
and so and I always kept a Bible on my desk when my players would come in and they would struggle and talk to me about issues. I knew where to go,
Yeah.
and there were times I would pray with my players
Mhm.
right there in my office, and those are some special times. And so um, when you leave your faith out of relationships, that's when they start going south a little bit. And it's when you incorporate your faith in everything that you do and your relationship with Christ. That's the most important thing that you can have in life.
Agree. So let's talk about your magazine, The Inside Pitch. I don't know a lot about it, but I'm interested to know some more about it. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, Inside Pitch is an idea that my youngest son Tyler and I came up with. Gosh, I guess it's been 14 years ago or something like that. And I wanted coaches to have an outlet where they could not only learn more about the game and read compelling articles about how to coach baseball, but also I wanted to integrate a little bit of my faith in there. So in
Yep.
every issue, we have a section in the magazine called Intentional Walk.
Mhm.
And it's always a faith-based article, but we also have, we have all kinds of college coaches and professional coaches that contribute to the magazine that really make it something that I think every baseball coach should read.
Yeah.
We're the official magazine of the American Baseball Coaches Association, which means that it goes out to at least 12 or 13,000 coaches 6 times a year. And so we just think it's probably, something it's I think a must have for every amateur coach. And now I'm not saying that just because I started it. It's because of the people that contribute to the magazine. People like Chris Burke and, people like that really have great knowledge of the game. So, yeah, it's been fun and it's still going strong. It's getting a little better every year. We have a guy in California that is really good with graphic design and actually making the magazine. We add the content, but he makes it look good.
Yeah.
So if you're a member of the American Baseball Coach Association, you get it free, but you can also subscribe to it, and people can contact me. I can give you my email address, or you can leave it. It's easy. Keith@scorebaseball.org.
Okay.
And I can let people know if they're interested in receiving that magazine, how they can get it.
100%. I'm one interested, so I'll definitely look into that. Let's look into the Dominican Republic. I've seen it on your website. You've been there a few times. What's the work you do out there, and how is it?
Yeah, when I left coaching, I was still fairly young. I was definitely too young to retire, and I wanted to do something with purpose.
Mhm.
And I'd heard some of my friends talk about going to the Dominican Republic. It's a huge baseball.
Yeah.
It's a small country, but
Yeah.
they're big in baseball.
Oh, yeah.
It's I would say each year there's probably 120 players from that tiny country that play Major League Baseball. So the kids down there love it. So I'd heard my friends talk about, if you have any used gear, save it for us and we'll take it down. So I would collect our used catching gear, our used baseball shoes and all that stuff. And I would give it to friends and they would take it down there. And so when I retired from coaching, this one friend said, "Hey, you've been giving us stuff to take to the Dominican Republic. Now we want you to go with us." So what we would do, Joseph, is a group of us would go down. I've been down there probably 32, 33 times, and we put on free baseball clinics for the kids down there. And a lot of the kids are barefoot. They can't afford shoes. A lot of them maybe eat one meal every 2 days, but they just love the game. So we go down, we put on these free baseball clinics, and then we teach them baseball for a couple of hours. And then after it's over, we get them together. There may be 200 kids or 300 kids each day. And then we share the gospel with them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kids, maybe their grandmother goes to church or maybe they've heard of Jesus, but they really don't know the gospel.
Yeah.
So we always have really good people that go with us. We've had Mariano Rivera go with us, Andy Pettit, a lot of great college coaches. It's always a great time. I haven't been as much recently because of my wife's had some illnesses and also the pandemic, kept me from traveling. but I'm planning on going perhaps for my last time this November.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping I can get back down there. I still have a lot of friends down there, but they are so passionate about baseball down there, Joseph. That's one of the things that keeps me interested in going back. It's like, when I used to have baseball camps at UK,
Mhm.
a lot of the kids were really interested and they were passionate about, but probably half the kids were just there because their parents dropped them off,
Yeah.
and they had the brand new glove, $300 bat,
Mhm.
and the parents would drop them off in a Lexus and all that. When you go to the Dominican Republic, kids will literally walk for 3 or 4 miles to get to the baseball field where we're having our clinics, and
Yeah.
some of them get there barefoot without a glove.
Mhm.
So it's just intrigued me to see how much these kids love the game, and then how really good they are too, because they play it every day.
Yeah. I think that's amazing, and I'm really glad because I knew you were doing mission trips kinda like
Yeah.
that. I think that's great. I knew you did obviously have baseball, but I didn't know you were spreading the word as well. I think that's great. I said I'd keep you for about 45 minutes. It's 46, so I'll ask you this last one. Um, this one might take a little bit, might be quick, you never know, but give some advice to young baseball players because we have a lot watching now, and then after that, give advice to younger men who's getting into the coaching realm.
Okay. Now that's two questions, Joseph. You know that, don't
I do I do know that. Now that I look at it, it is. There's 2 question
you?
marks.
No, that's great. That's good. Both good questions. I'll address the players first. I'll say this. Um, I don't see many kids playing catch with their dads anymore. I don't see many brothers playing catch with each other in the front yard or backyard anymore. Um, I think that a lot of kids play little league baseball, and that's great. It's a
Mhm.
great experience. It's a great organization, and then they move up into travel ball and high school ball and all that. But it takes a lot of practice.
Yeah.
It takes, if you really want to be good, you can't just do it when the coach says come play or come practice. You have to find somebody in your area that's willing to help you practice, whether it's your father, a cousin, an older brother. And that's what I had going for me. I had an older brother that would catch me every day, and I would throw every day that the weather was good. And I just think kids need to play more. I think they need to get out and have fun, play wiffle ball, play catch, throw the ball against a brick wall and practice fielding ground balls. It'd be like if someone wanted to play guitar for a famous country music band.
Mhm.
If you only played when somebody asked you to practice or play, you wouldn't get very good. But if you sit around the house all the time and you learn new chords and you practice, you would get better and better and better. It's the same way with sports.
Yeah.
You know, Carlton Alexander and I were good friends, and his older brother Stan. I remember I would go to their house sometimes after school, and sometimes practice. And his older brother Stan every day would shoot 100 free throws at his house at his
Mhm.
outdoor basketball goal. Now he got to be a pretty good free throw shooter because not only did he practice at school, he practiced when he got home. And it's the same with any sport or any musician, anything you want to be good at. You've got to do it often, and you've got to practice. You got to be passionate about it, and you have to have a great work ethic. So I would encourage kids just to play more. And if you can't find anybody to play with, throw the ball against the wall and work on catching ground balls. Or I used to just throw the ball up in the air and practice catching fly balls. I used to take tobacco sticks because we lived on a farm, and I would whittle a handle and I would hit rocks with a tobacco stick over and over and over again, just to improve my hand-eye coordination. So
Yeah.
just practice on your own. Don't depend on someone else to do it for you.
Mhm.
You got to do it yourself. And then the question about the coaches. If I was a young high school or a young college coach, for instance, if I was the high school coach at Bowling Green High School or Barron County High School or Evanston County High School, as often as possible, I would go down and watch Western Kentucky University practice
Hmm.
because they have fall practice. And if you're not coaching football, if you're just coaching baseball, you can learn so much. Like the guy they have coaching at Western right now,
Hmm.
he's won numerous junior college championships. He is a veteran coach that knows the game. And I guarantee you, if you went up to him and said, "Hey, can I watch you practice today?"
Hmm.
No question, he'd let you watch. And you're going to pick up different drills. You're going to learn. You're going to become even more passionate about the sport. So I think be a lifetime learner. That's what I would tell a young coach. Um, a lot of coaches have heard of Tim Corbin, the head coach at Vanderbilt University.
Yeah.
Um, we go to the American Baseball Coaches Association clinics, and there'll be 7,000 or 8,000 coaches there. And we have all these great speakers that talk about different baseball drills or the mental aspect of baseball or whatever. Tim Corbin, even though he's a veteran coach, he's probably 60 years old now, and he's one of the most respected coaches in America. He is always on the front row taking notes.
Yeah.
So I think just be a lifetime learner, and also, like you and I just talked about a few minutes ago, take advantage of those opportunities to build those relationships with your players,
Yeah.
because some of those players really, really need you.
Yeah.
They all need you, but some of them,
Yeah.
maybe they don't have a father figure right now in their life. Maybe they're going through something really tragic in their life, and they need you in their life. And I think just being a good listener is a great attribute for a coach,
Yeah.
and also the ability to ask questions
Mhm.
to your players. That's the best way players learn, is if you ask them questions and get them to communicate with you, you find out where they stand and what you can do to help them. So yeah, those are some of the things I would recommend. And lastly, join the American Baseball Coaches Association, because you get free videotapes of people like Tim Corbin, like Nick Mingione in Kentucky, like Ron Polk. I mean, all these great coaches do videos, and you can get those if you join the American Baseball Coaches Association. You get to go to the clinics once a year, and then you get the free videos. You get the Inside Pitch magazine, so you can pick up a lot of stuff
Yeah.
from joining that organization. And I'm not saying that to promote my magazine. I saw you smile, Joseph.
Hey, I think it's worth it, man. I think that the magazine alone is worth it. I might
Yeah,
have to sign up.
you
Well,
should.
Keith, that leaves me out of questions. We had a lot of people in here, man, watching. This is an episode I wanted to do a lot. I want to thank you again for coming on here with me. And I think you said a lot of great things. I think you inspired some people. We had a lot of people in the chat. I'll pull up some of the comments. Ronald Scott talking about the Steve Hollow Invitational. He said they were the original no blood, no foul guys. He also said one of Lindseyville's best. And he also said a great coach, but an even better man. So we had a lot of people in here watching and talking. Um, Keith, you're welcome back on the show anytime. Even if you wanted to get back on tomorrow, you're always welcome. This was
Well, I'm gonna throw out a really kind of a selfish plug here, but I'm actually writing a book on coaching baseball,
mhm,
and I don't know. It'll probably be finished midsummer, late summer, early fall. I don't know, but I would love to get on here sometime and just talk about that
talk about
book,
the book. Yes.
um, and just maybe get the word out, and then we could maybe talk about some other things too. We could talk about some of the other coaches I had there at Edmonson County, and
Yeah.
I want to close by saying this: I absolutely love Edmonson County. Everywhere I go, people ask me, where are you from? Well, I tell them, if they're from a place like New York or
Yeah.
someplace like that, I'll say I'm from a little town, Kentucky, near Mammoth Cave National Park, so they'll get an idea.
Yeah.
But if it's somebody from Kentucky, I tell them I'm from Lindseyville, Kentucky,
Mm.
and I'm proud of that, because really some of the greatest people I've ever known in my life are from right there in Edmonson County.
Mhm. Well, yeah, and look, that episode with your book, that's 100% down. I'm already marking my calendar. We'll do that, and I can't wait to hear it come out. I always like to get the local guy, the local legends, but you're a legend for sure. And I want to say thank you again for coming on here. It was fantastic. It was worth every bit. I decided I would hold you an extra 10 minutes. So I'll go ahead and get out of your hair and let you go watch the rest of that game.
All right, Joseph. Thank you so much, friend.
No problem. Thank you, Keith.
All righty.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was our interview with Keith Madison as the Joe Show. I want to thank everybody for coming out and watching. We had an amazing episode. And the thing I loved the most, the chat was very interactive, and that's something I love. Keith said it right there. You know, he wants to be back on when he gets his book done in the future, so that will be amazing. I would love to do that. I think he spread a lot of great things and a lot of great messages. I love a man who will come on a show like this and talk about their faith, because that's something that we advocate and talk about a lot. You can always see it in the top right. So I want to thank everybody for coming out and tuning in. Be sure to share this after, because it's very easy to come back and watch. I make sure this is posted on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook after to come watch. Thank you for the support on last week's episode with Sawyer Drake. And also, speaking of Sawyer, shout out to all the recent graduates. It's a time that I will experience in 2 years, but I don't know that feeling, of graduating. High school, I'm sure it's hard, but I wish success to all those graduating and a great life ahead. Go be successful. And if you want to coach, if you're still a young athlete, listen to some of the advice Coach Madison gave. I think it's really worth it to take to heart. We went on for 56 minutes today. That's a good episode. I like that. At one point, we had 200 and something people in here, pushing 300. That's a lot, man. That's really good, and I love that. Let's spread this video podcast out. Let's make sure everybody gets to see it. God bless everyone. Be safe tonight in our area with the storms that are coming through. And be sure to tune in soon. We have an episode Tuesday with two great people from Hart County. So